Some horror films are designed to scare you for 2 hours and send you home safely. Others go further. They cross lines. They provoke outrage. They get seized by customs officers, cut to pieces by censorship boards, or banned outright from theatrical release. These are the films that governments debated, critics condemned, and audiences whispered about in bootleg circles. Not because they relied on cheap jump scares, but because they felt too real, too violent, or too psychologically invasive for mainstream comfort. Studios distanced themselves, posters were pulled, entire countries refused to screen them, yet controversy only amplified their mystique. Over time, these so-called forbidden films built reputations that far outlived their bans. They became endurance tests for horror fans searching for something truly extreme. The question is not whether they are shocking. The question is whether you could handle sitting through them in a packed theater. These are 10 banned horror movies too disturbing for theaters.
A Serbian Film, 2010. Though released later, A Serbian Film quickly became synonymous with censorship battles worldwide. Directed by Srđan Spasojević, it was banned or heavily cut in numerous countries for extreme sexual violence and disturbing themes. Even seasoned horror fans found it difficult to endure. Supporters claim it serves as political allegory about exploitation and corruption. Detractors argue it crosses moral boundaries without justification. Film festivals refused to screen it. Governments confiscated copies. The controversy became inseparable from its identity. Watching it became a test of endurance rather than entertainment. Regardless of interpretation, its graphic imagery forced global debates about artistic freedom and censorship limits. A Serbian Film exists in the shadowy space between provocation and repulsion. Few films have triggered such unified outrage across continents. That level of reaction secured its infamous cult status.
The Human Centipede 2, Full Sequence, 2011. The sequel to The Human Centipede, First Sequence, went further than most thought possible. Directed by Tom Six, the black-and-white nightmare amplified grotesque imagery and sadistic tone. The British Board of Film Classification initially refused it a certificate, effectively banning it in the UK. Critics labeled it morally bankrupt and exploitative. Unlike its predecessor's clinical tone, this installment embraced chaos and depravity. Tom Six openly challenged censorship boards, framing the outrage as proof of horror's power. Graphic sequences overshadowed narrative entirely. While many dismissed it as shock for shock's sake, others defended its meta-commentary on audience complicity. Regardless of perspective, few films in modern horror faced such widespread rejection from official institutions. The ban only strengthened its reputation as something forbidden and extreme.
The Texas Chain Saw Massacre, 1974. Shot on a minimal budget by Tobe Hooper, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre felt less like fiction and more like recovered evidence. Several countries banned it outright, disturbed by its grimy realism and relentless tone. Despite minimal on-screen gore, the sound design and documentary-style camera work created unbearable tension. Leatherface became an icon of rural nightmare. Censorship boards argued it glorified brutality. Audiences argued it felt too plausible. The film's raw texture made it seem almost illegal to watch. Over time, critics reevaluated it as a masterpiece of atmosphere and psychological horror. Its influence on the slasher genre is immeasurable. What terrified governments most wasn't blood, it was how real the terror felt. The film stripped horror of fantasy and replaced it with sweat, heat, and panic. That authenticity made it unforgettable. I Spit on Your Grave, 1978. Few titles ignited as much fury as I Spit on Your Grave. Directed by Meir Zarki, the film faced bans in multiple territories for its prolonged assault sequences and graphic revenge. Critics condemned it as misogynistic exploitation. Supporters argued it portrayed female vengeance with unapologetic intensity. Lead actress Camille Keaton delivered a performance that carried both vulnerability and fury. The film's marketing leaned into controversy, amplifying outrage. In the UK, it became part of the infamous video nasty list seized from shelves. Over time, feminist debates reevaluated its themes more critically. Regardless of interpretation, censorship boards reacted swiftly and harshly. Its notoriety became inseparable from its identity. Even today, it remains one of the most polarizing revenge horror films ever made.
The Last House on the Left, 1972. Before becoming a remake, The Last House on the Left shocked 1970s audiences with raw brutality. Directed by Wes Craven, the film faced bans and severe cuts internationally. Its revenge narrative included graphic assault scenes that critics deemed exploitative. Craven defended it as a cautionary tale about violence and moral decay. The gritty, low-budget aesthetic made events feel disturbingly authentic. Censors feared its realism blurred lines between entertainment and trauma. Despite controversy, it became a cult favorite among horror purists. The film helped define the video nasty era in the UK, where authorities cracked down on extreme home releases. Its influence on revenge horror is undeniable. What once seemed unwatchable to regulators is now studied as a turning point in exploitation cinema.
Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. Few horror films sparked legal chaos like Cannibal Holocaust. Directed by Ruggero Deodato, the movie was banned in multiple countries for extreme violence and animal cruelty. Authorities even charged Deodato with obscenity and suspected him of filming real murders due to its found footage realism. The cast had signed contracts to disappear from media temporarily, intensifying the illusion. Graphic imagery and unflinching brutality pushed audiences beyond comfort. Critics called it exploitative. Supporters argued it was a savage critique of media sensationalism. Regardless of interpretation, censorship boards reacted swiftly. Decades later, it remains one of the most controversial horror films ever made. Its reputation is built as much on courtroom drama as on content. Cannibal Holocaust blurred fiction and reality so convincingly that officials believed it crossed the line entirely.
The Exorcist, 1973. When The Exorcist premiered, audiences fainted, vomited, and fled theaters in shock. Directed by William Friedkin, the film pushed religious horror into terrifying realism. Several countries imposed bans or heavy cuts, claiming it was blasphemous and psychologically harmful. The possession of young Regan felt disturbingly authentic, heightened by Linda Blair's raw performance. Reports of ambulances parked outside cinemas only fueled panic. Religious institutions publicly condemned it, yet the controversy turned it into a phenomenon. Beneath the shock lies a deeply serious exploration of faith and doubt. Its practical effects still hold power decades later. What was once labeled too dangerous for public viewing is now considered one of the greatest horror films ever made. The ban attempts only intensified its legend. Sometimes fear spreads faster when authorities try to suppress it.
Salò, or the 120 Days of Sodom, 1975, directed by Pier Paolo Pasolini, Salò remains one of the most controversial films ever produced. Banned in several countries for extreme sexual violence and political allegory, it shocked audiences upon release. Pasolini adapted the Marquis de Sade's work into a fascist setting, amplifying its brutality with chilling precision. Graphic imagery and moral nihilism left critics divided between condemnation and reluctant admiration. Censorship boards struggled to categorize it as art or obscenity. Its bleak commentary on power and corruption makes it deeply unsettling beyond surface shock. Decades later, it is still banned or restricted in parts of the world. Salò challenges viewers not with jump scares, but with ideological horror. It is disturbing not only because of what it shows, but because of what it implies about humanity.
Horror has always tested boundaries, but these films shattered them completely. Governments stepped in, censors intervened, critics warned audiences away. Yet bans rarely erase curiosity. In many cases, prohibition made these movies more powerful. They became underground legends passed between collectors and whispered about online. Some are now studied in film schools. Others remain divisive endurance tests. What they share is impact. They forced conversations about morality, censorship, and artistic freedom. Whether you view them as masterpieces or mistakes, they changed the landscape of horror forever. The theater doors may have closed on them once, but history reopened the discussion. Sometimes the films deemed too disturbing for public consumption become the ones that redefine the genre entirely. The real horror might not be what's on screen, but how strongly society reacts when art refuses to behave.